Which of these 5 keys attracts you most? Don't analyze it, don't judge it, don't think about its function or style. Just pause, look, and let your heart choose. This isn't just a simple test. It's an invitation to find a part of yourself you rarely see. Carl Jung believed that our choices, even the seemingly insignificant ones, are a reflection of what we carry within. The archetypes that inhabit us, the desires we don't know how to name, and the wounds we hide from the world. Sometimes, what attracts us most says more about our soul than all the words combined. Is it possible that a key can unlock your psyche? Can it point to your shadows, your need for security, or your hidden longing for love? Choose, but choose intuitively, because what you're about to hear won't just be an aesthetic analysis. It will be a story about you. Analysis of key number 1. The classic key, the archetype of the observer. At first glance, this key might seem the most ordinary. It doesn't shout for attention, it doesn't stand out for its colors, it doesn't try to impress. And yet, that is precisely what draws many of us to it. There is something comforting in its simplicity, something familiar, something that provides a sense of order in a world full of chaos. If you have chosen this key, it's possible that within you there is a profound need for clarity and tranquility. Your psyche longs for a space where there is no excess stimulation, no excess drama, no excess expectations. You simply want to exist in silence, in simplicity, in clarity. Carl Jung once said that outer order is often a compensation for inner chaos. By choosing this key, you might be subconsciously trying to find balance. You seek harmony because perhaps something in your life or your past has been too chaotic, too painful, too unpredictable. Archetypally, this key symbolizes the fugitive or the observer. The fugitive is the one who withdraws from the world's noise, not because they are weak, but because they value their inner space more than fame. They prefer to watch from the outside, to listen more than speak. It's an archetype that carries the wisdom of distance, but also the risk of isolation. It can indicate a person who protects their heart so effectively that, over time, even they lose contact with it. The observer, on the other hand, is the one who sees more because they are not distracted by the chaos. They perceive the nuances in silence and the meaning in simplicity. People who identify with this archetype are often deeply reflective and sensitive, but they tend to stay in the shadows, avoiding commitment because intense emotions from others feel overwhelming. This key can also be a symbol of emotional armor that takes the form of withdrawal, an invisible boundary, as if to say, I'm here but not completely. I'm close but not too close. This defense mechanism is often formed in childhood, when we learn that expressing emotions carries the risk of being hurt. Simplicity becomes safety, silence becomes protection. But Jung also reminded us, what you repress does not cease to exist, it just ceases to be available to your consciousness. Is your silence a refuge, or is it a prison? Your choice says, I need peace. But the question is, are you truly finding it, or are you just reproducing it externally, hoping it will eventually become internal? Analysis of key number 2. The ornate key, the archetype of the ruler. This is no ordinary key. It is a statement piece, radiating prestige and importance. It doesn't just unlock a door. It commands a space. It wants you to feel significant, to put down roots, to stop rushing, and to allow yourself the luxury of being important. If you have chosen this key, perhaps deep within you lives a desire for recognition. Perhaps your soul whispers that you deserve more attention, a space where you can be yourself without fear of being ignored, overlooked, or unheard. According to Jung's depth psychology, this key resonates with the archetype of the king or the ruler. The king is not just a ruler. He is a symbol of dignity, authority, and being the center. He is one who does not have to prove his worth because he is worth. But the path to this inner king often passes through a wound. The wound of rejection, of invisibility, of a lack of unconditional love. Choosing this key may suggest that you have a deep need for control. Not because you are despotic, but because in the past, you may have felt too often that you were losing the ground beneath your feet. This key can also symbolize the inner parent you may have lacked, physically or emotionally. And now, with this choice, you are unconsciously trying to build within yourself what you didn't have before. a safe, strong, and protective place inside you. It's a space where you can finally lean on yourself. But it is also a trap. Sometimes this key, instead of being a tool of access, becomes a throne on which you sit alone, separated from emotional intimacy. Its ornate design says, "I want comfort," but this comfort is often compensation for a long period of tension. People who choose these symbols often carry a deep life fatigue, mental, emotional, and existential. They long for a space where they don't have to pretend. But a key that looks like an oasis on the outside can also be a place to hide. It can be a bastion built by the ego that protects you from confronting your own sensitivity. For if you always have to be strong, important, independent, when and where do you allow yourself to be weak? To cry? To feel helpless? Jung stressed that our shadow often manifests in what we overaffirm. So, if you choose luxury and prestige as your natural environment, it is worth asking, what am I trying to compensate for? Analysis of key number 3. The austere key, the archetype of the warrior. This key does not draw attention with ornate patterns or soft edges. Its austerity says it all. I am hard, indestructible. Metal and wood, in a stark, minimalist form, create an impression of solidity, inaccessibility, and protection. This is not a key for the overly sensitive. It is a fortress, a wall that separates the world from your deepest self. If you have chosen this key, perhaps your psyche is expressing a need for resilience. You are a person who has learned to set boundaries, not only for others but above all for yourself. Your emotional world is not a battlefield, but a fortress that cannot be easily conquered. This is a survival mechanism. Perhaps life has taught you that the world is full of dangers and that trust is a luxury you cannot afford. In Jung's psychology, this choice resonates with the archetype of the warrior or the loner. The warrior is a character who fights not for glory, but for survival, to protect what is valuable. They are not afraid of pain, but they often carry it alone, in silence. This is strength, but it is also a burden. The loner, on the other hand, is someone who, by choice or necessity, withdraws from the crowd, seeking in solitude a space to regenerate and reflect. They do not trust easily because life has taught them that openness can be synonymous with pain. Choosing this austere key may indicate a person who has experienced too much in life to trust without limits. Your skin is thick, but underneath it may be an invisible but deep wound. Jung observed that the warrior archetype is often associated with a defense mechanism that can lead to isolation. You protect yourself from being hurt, but that protection sometimes becomes a prison. You may avoid intimacy because you fear losing control. You may push away those who want to get close, even if deep down you crave their presence. Are you able to open the gates of your fortress? Are you willing to take off the armor, even for a moment? This key says, I am ready to fight. But do you remember that sometimes the greatest courage is to allow yourself weakness? Carl Jung wrote that true strength lies not in hardness, but in the capacity for transformation, in the acceptance of all human complexity, the shadow and the light. This key is a manifesto of survival, but also an invitation to a new path. A path where hardness meets gentleness. A path where your armor becomes just that, and not a cage. Analysis of key number 4. The antique key, the archetype of the traditionalist. This key has a story to tell. By looking at it, one can almost feel the smell of old books, the warmth of the wood, the touch of the past. It is elegant, but without being loud. Stable, embedded in time, as if it already knows the stories of many generations. This is not the choice of someone seeking novelty, but of someone who longs for depth, meaning, and order. If you have chosen this key, it is possible that your psyche craves structure, rules, and an aesthetic that provides security and sense. You are a person who cannot stand chaos, not only on an emotional level, but also on an intellectual one. You need a framework, you value order. You believe that the world, though sometimes brutal, can be understood if we find its internal rules. According to Carl Jung's depth psychology, this choice resonates with the archetype of the protector or the traditionalist. The protector is a figure who guards not only others, but also ideas, values, and legacy. They feel a sense of responsibility, believing that the role of a human being is to take care of order, of family, of the standards that are passed down. The traditionalist, on the other hand, is one who seeks support in what is proven, who trusts what has stood the test of time, sometimes out of fear of change, sometimes out of a deep respect for the wisdom of ancestors. In choosing this key, you may be a person who feels a strong need for a moral compass. You have principles. You cannot stand falsehood, indecision, or empty words. You need depth, truth, authenticity. But as Jung warns, every archetype has its shadow. Behind the desire for structure can hide the fear of losing control. Behind the attachment to tradition, the fear of the unknown. Perhaps you fear chaos, not just the external, but above all, the internal chaos of what might happen if you stopped following the rules, if you just felt. This key is an expression of nostalgia for stability, perhaps for times when things seemed simpler, when life had clear roles. Does this mean you are conservative? Not necessarily. Perhaps you simply feel that, in the chaos of modern life, it is necessary to hold on to something stable to preserve what is human, to not fall apart. Jung wrote that the greatest potential for transformation is found where consciousness meets the unconscious. By choosing this key, perhaps you are trying to anchor yourself in an ever-changing world. Perhaps you seek not limitation in structure, but freedom, the freedom that comes when you no longer have to fear that everything will fall apart. Analysis of key number 5. The unique key, the archetype of the divine child. This key does not sit quietly in a corner. It speaks with its color, its texture, and its design. It immediately catches the eye as if to say, "Look at me. I am different. I have life." It does not try to fit in. It does not want to be a mere background. It is an expression, perhaps even a cry of individuality. If this key has caught your eye, you are probably a person who does not settle for the monotony of life. You have a curious, spontaneous inner child, rebellious against rigid norms and forms. Or maybe it's more than a child. An artist who wants to see the world differently. More deeply, more colorfully, with soul. Carl Jung called this personality type the archetype of the divine child. Primitive, innocent, but also full of creative power. It is the part of you that believes life is more than an obligation, that there is something beyond the mechanics of daily life, that every person carries a light within that should not be suppressed. By choosing this key, you may be expressing, consciously or unconsciously, your need for emotional freedom. You want to speak with your own voice, think for yourself, love according to your own rules. You dislike masks. It bothers you to pretend. Perhaps in the past you were told that you were too much, too sensitive, too emotional. Perhaps you were taught to be polite, quiet, and obedient, and now your soul is demanding space to finally dance in its own colors. But as Jung reminds us, even colors can be a mask. Sometimes what shines brightest on the outside hides the pain on the inside. Perhaps your creativity is not just joy, but also a shield. Perhaps your expression is a way to survive. Perhaps you laugh the loudest because you fear that if you fall silent, someone will see your tears. This key can be a symbol of a soul that was once wounded precisely for being itself. This choice also indicates a strong need for authenticity, even if it means loneliness. Because not everyone understands those who go against the current. But you know that a soul that is silent for too long begins to get sick. And creativity is your medicine, your prayer, your way of being present in a world that often tries to turn us into copies of ourselves. Jung wrote that contact with the archetype of the divine child is one of the most important experiences in the process of individuation, because it reminds us of who we were before we started to adapt, before we learned to hide, before the world told us who we should be. This key says, "I want to be myself." But can you be yourself also in silence, in sadness, in doubt? Are you willing to discover not only the colors, but also the shadows of your soul? Choosing one of these keys is not a trivial decision. It is the voice of your unconscious trying to communicate with your consciousness through symbols. Even the simplest shapes, colors, and textures hide stories about your desires, fears, needs, and wounds. What you choose reveals a part of your soul, often hidden, unconscious, but no less real. No path is better or worse. Each is part of your unique journey towards wholeness. Looking with the eyes of the soul allows you to see that every symbol has the power to guide you towards a deeper understanding of yourself and the world you carry within.